Okay, Caitlin, how do you think your writing lesson went?
Overall, I was really happy with my lesson. I think that Jonathan and Courtney were almost more engaged than I thought they would be. I know we had talked in our pre-conference about like my worries about how many sentences they were going to be able to write and how far they were going to be able to go with their ideas in one lesson. But they just wanted to keep writing, and even yesterday, right before we left, Jonathan asked, "Well, we're going to work on our writing tomorrow, right?"
So
And
sweet.
so I was so happy just that they were so engaged in it. I think that Courtney was really able to just kind of write and go, and I kind of had to check in with her a little bit about using her chart and making sure she was using her reasons as she was writing, but she was able to work a little bit more independently. Jonathan, although he needed some help here and there, I was really surprised with how he was able to work independently, and they were using the word wall to help them, using the graphic organizer that we had made. I think that it was helpful that I used my example, and I plan to keep using that in the future, like today and next week, as we keep doing our writing lessons, to keep reviewing mine and keep going through, like, okay, well, how did I start my sentences? I think that there was a lot that happened in that lesson because we did go over like the opinion sentence starters and different ones that they could use. But I think that that was helpful for them as well.
Okay, so I hear you saying that you used your example.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that that lend itself to only this lesson or setting them up for the future? Can you tell me more about it?
So I think my plan would be to keep using that as an example, but in different ways. So I was able to show them yesterday, like my opening and how I started my writing, but I could continue to use that, like, oh, okay, well, this is my reason that I have, and what else did I put with my reason?
Okay.
Or I used a couple sentences on purpose that had an exclamation point, or different kinds of sentences. So in the future, next week, I would like to do a lesson about not only punctuation, but having different kinds of sentences in our writing and not just having the same, like, monotone kind of basic sentences over and over. So if I continue to use mine as a model and as an example, they have a really good reference to use throughout the lessons. Also, when it comes time to write our closings, they can look at mine. I could also go through the editing process with mine too. Like, I already noticed there's a couple things that I could, fix up, or, I needed to add an S on a word, or different things. So just to use that as a model throughout the whole process, I think will be useful.
Okay, so I hear you already kind of planning for the future references or lessons. You said that you would like to look at their punctuation and using the word wall. Is there another lesson that you think that you could form that might help them make their writing a little bit smoother?
So I'm thinking that we could maybe do something with either like transition words or just something in general to help. Really, I guess it would be transition words to kind of help their writing kind of flow a little bit. And this is something that I feel like I need to work on a little bit because I'm used to having fourth graders, and transition words are a huge lesson that we do in fourth grade. But with the younger ones, it's not, I mean, it's something that we will do, but maybe it's not as big of a topic or of an idea that we might as in fourth grade. But I also think it will be important to kind of point out some basic transition words or different ways that they can kind of flow between their reasons and their ideas in their writing.
So you're saying that you're very comfortable with what it looks like in fourth grade, but a little bit unsure of what it might look like in first grade.
Yes.
Do you have a plan kind of what it would look like to use those transition words to kind of support them because it is unfamiliar to them?
So I think that a couple things. I think it would be important to model it to them. And I don't really have many transition words in mind, so I think the idea of me going back with them and doing it together and kind of adding a couple to mine might be helpful. Also, I think anything that I can have visual up around will be helpful. So not only having the opinion sentence starters, but maybe having a little poster that just has some example transition words to help them. And then, I mean, we really could, now that I'm kind of thinking about this all in my head, we really could do an activity even before our writing with transition words, and maybe either point them out in a text, or I could have sentence strips with sentences, and we could add transition words in to just kind of get them thinking about it.
It sounds like the ideas are really flowing. And you mentioned a lot about modeling.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday when you read your example of the sunflower, there was a really good teachable moment with Courtney with one of your examples. Can you tell me a little bit more about that in terms of how she said that she was unsure of eating sunflower seeds?
Oh, yes, that's right. That was so funny. It was very interesting because I feel like I assumed that everyone knew that you eat sunflower seeds, or that sunflowers grow seeds, and I was kind of like
taken back. Yeah,
like I was kind of like, oh, okay. And I remember we looked at each other and we were like, oh. But it was very interesting. It definitely was a teachable moment to kind of explain that, like, because I think Jonathan had said something like, oh, well, I eat nuts, or something like that. And, like, I think it was definitely an interesting conversation. And I think it's important to take a couple minutes when a moment like that comes up, because she didn't have any idea.
Mm-hmm.
So to kind of explain, like, okay, well, they grow in the middle of the sunflower, then you can eat them, and different things, and then they come in a shell and different things, and it was very interesting. And I think as a teacher, it's those moments that mean a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And like those moments where, it's not something that's scripted, it's not something that's in our lesson plans, but it kind of just pops up naturally, and it was a very interesting and cool conversation.
Yeah, and she seemed really excited to know that information, almost like she would go home and share it with her family.
I hope so, because that's pretty cool.
But how did you tie that back to your writing?
So I connected that to just how cool is that, and my whole opinion was that sunflowers are the coolest flowers.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to actually really easily make that connection, I guess, between, like, oh, you didn't know about that. I know about that. Mm-hmm. That's one of my reasons. Like how cool is that? Like,
and that's almost why I wrote about it, to inform others as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of exactly, like, that's how I was thinking about it, is, oh, it's a flower that makes something that you can eat. Like, how cool is that? But I guess it's, if they didn't realize that, that's, like, extra cool for them.
Of course.
And even one of my reasons is that they can grow in different sizes. And I had told them, I think the previous day, that I had grown sunflowers before that grew to, like, as tall as my garage, mm-hmm. and they were really big. So yesterday, before in the beginning of their tutoring session, I showed them a picture. I brought in a picture of the sunflowers, and just kind of like making those connections between my piece, I think helps them get more excited for their pieces, like their writing pieces, mm-hmm.
as well as building the trust in this environment. Mm-hmm. So you had asked me to look at the wait time. Mm-hmm. Looking at the data, how did you feel about that?
I think overall I was pretty happy with my wait time. I also think it was, like, really in my head to be thinking about it. Like, mm-hmm. I kept thinking, like, okay, wait time. But I also feel like that there were some situations where I could have waited a little longer, or I could have, I feel like sometimes I was more directing them towards an answer, or directing them towards something to use, like even with the opinion, the sentence starters, or with just different words, or how to solve the problem of, oh, how do you spell this word? Like, I feel like I could have done a little bit more to kind of take a step back, mm-hmm. but overall I feel like as far as wait time goes, I think that I was okay with my wait time, and I tried to sit back and kind of just, like, even if it was silent for a little bit, like, kind of let them think. Jonathan sometimes just jumps out with his answers, and he doesn't need a lot of time. Courtney, I think, needs some more time sometimes, and you can see her kind of, like, mouthing her ideas and kind of, like, thinking her way through mm-hmm. things. So I need to make sure that, and I'm aware of that, so I need to make sure that I allow her that time to do that.
Okay, so in my data, I actually created a new column with a follow-up question, mm-hmm. which was where you would ask an initial question and not get a quick response. So you would kind of rephrase that. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about doing that in a lesson?
I think that that's a really useful strategy. And then if I don't get the answer that I'm looking for, instead of just telling them or pointing it out or something, to ask a follow-up question. I think that that's something that I think next week I'm going to really focus on, and maybe I'll have you even look at, like my follow-up questions to my questions, or rewording my questions, or even like the prompting aspect of that, of like maybe asking a follow-up question, but how else can I kind of prompt them through something without coming out and saying, this is the answer.
Mm-hmm. I completely understand.
Yeah.
There was one question that I had for you. There was a lot of moments, and I think you've mentioned before that Courtney and Jonathan are at different levels.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way that you would be able to engage them in each other's writing in a lesson?
So it's funny that you said that, because I was really thinking about that as well. Like, I try to have them share as much as possible, but especially with the lesson yesterday, we didn't really do much at the end. Like, they read their stories out loud, which was great, but I think in the future I want them to ask each other a question about what they're writing, and even if they're not done, or either in my classroom in 4th grade we'll do like a compliment or something you were wondering, or different things like that, like in a peer conference or something. So I'm wondering if I can even do more of like a peer conference idea, and they can ask each other questions or give a nice compliment to each other.
That sounds really nice. Well, I think that overall you did a very nice job with your wait time. It sounds like you're already looking forward to your next lesson and really thinking about how to implement this into your lesson. Yeah. So thank you for having me in.